everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Coach Me. I'm one of your hosts, Vic Sorrell, coming to you from Nashville, Tennessee.
And Candice Rooney, joining from Austin, Texas.
Hi, everyone. I'm Des Stevens, and I'm the proud founder and CEO of Radiant Coaches Academy.
And we are delighted to have with us today Casey Perkins-Lawrence, holistic life coach extraordinaire, because there are many things you do in addition to holistic life coaching. But right on the tip of my tongue, because I was checking out your website this morning, I love the way that you talked about holistic life coaching from your perspective and how you do what you do. So I would love for you to just explain to us what's the most important thing for you that people know about the way that you coach.
Great question. Well, thank you for having me on here. I can't wait to see how what you all are doing here comes together. I'm really excited about that. So I should say that I fell in love with coaching by being coached, and I think for maybe a lot of coaches that's the case. I actually saw an Enneagram coach, and that's where I sort of first experienced that. And so that was sort of in the back of my mind as I was going through training and then as I started my practice. And I think for me, the thing that has always been true is that communication is where it's at, is what sort of, moves us through life, through our relationships, is how we communicate with other people. At a young age, I fell in love with languages. And so just the use of words, and then later learning that we can communicate without words, all of that has been what followed me up to this point. And so I think that's the most important thing for me, is that a coaching session for me should feel like a conversation, a really comfortable one. And I like to think that because I have this proclivity for words, for how I speak to people, that's a real asset for how I engage with my clients. I try to listen and hone in on their language, on their, not just again, the words that they use, but their body language and those, subtle cues that they give. And so for me, it's really about, can we walk away feeling like a conversation was had, and that in that, something happened in your mind, in your heart. I was on my session that I do for Radiant yesterday, and the idea of goals came up, and that is a real buzzword in the coaching industry, is that we help people set goals. And that certainly can be true. But I think there's so much around that word built into people's mindsets. And so even just in something like, I don't suggest goal setting for my clients unless that's something they bring up, because I know that word carries a lot of weight and a lot of connotation. And so sometimes, sitting with a coaching client really is just a chance for them to talk to someone that's not judging them, that's not trying to make sense out of what they're saying, but instead just allowing them to speak. And so I think that's probably the overarching core of what I do, is that ability to converse, to just be a listening ear. And then certainly if you have a desire to work on something in a way that takes you towards action steps or a practice, that's a big buzzword for me in my personal journey. But if that's what you want to do, then certainly I'm there to facilitate and help ask the questions that will get you there. But at the end of the day, if we walk away having had a meaningful conversation, then I think we've absolutely nailed it.
What I'm hearing you say, I think, and see if you agree, is when we make the space for our answers naturally happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so often that space doesn't happen in the coaching hour. And I actually just gave an example of a client that this was my ego getting in the way a little bit, but throughout the hour, I was really kind of pushing for some sort of sign that we had, the common word is a breakthrough. I think that sounds a little dramatic, but that we had something happen. And at the end of the session, I have to be honest, I kind of thought, man, that was a little bit of a miss. And so we got off the call, and I just thought, well, okay, you can't win them all. Well, then literally the next morning, I get an email in my inbox that he said, I just wanted to let you know that I slept on what we talked about. And, I just wanted you to know that I've come up with several things I want to do from here. And so it was that reminder to like get out of my own way. And as coaches, we have to be reminded of that sometimes. Get out of your own way, let the space be the space, and you never know what happens because that session continues on without you after it's over. The client continues to process and marinate in all of that. And so that was a fantastic reminder for me that, it's not about you, the coach, and that the space is that container for great things to happen.
Wow.
I have a question. Let's see. What is one of your favorite questions to ask your coaching clients?
So the first thing that comes to mind is actually a response question. And that really is, it's one that knocked me off my socks during my training. And it is the simplest thing. And that is, but what if it's not? Or, but what if it is? In a response to our tendency, and this is where I think the whole coaching model, the whole practice of coaching really is turning our cultural norms on their heads, because we have this tendency to constantly try to make meaning. And so clients often come in already having decided that this is this and this is not this and I can't do that and all of that sort of stuff. And so I think one of the most powerful things we can do as coaches is just fling the door wide open to say, what if none of what you're saying right now is true? There's all sorts of ways we do that. What if you had a magic wand? What if you this? What if you that? But I think just that sort of what if question, taking it back from the concreteness that we try to create back into the realm of possibility, and reminding people that they don't have to live in the boxes that other people tell them to or that they tell themselves to. And so while that's not a question I start a session with, it's one I find myself asking often throughout the conversation when I hear folks self-imposing limitations and restrictions, and just being able to say, but what if it wasn't? What if that's not true? What could be true for you in this situation? So that's probably one of my favorite tools, and I think it's the simplest, but listening for those perfect places to insert that can be really, really magical.
Yeah. And so you mentioned not really using the word like goal setting or setting goals. So if the question is, what if X, right? How do you coach someone into the next steps or taking next steps without using that word goal or goal setting?
Yeah. I think at the simplest, I certainly listen for the client's own language. And if they throw the word goal out, then it's probably fair game. Some people talk about next steps or something like that. I think ultimately what we're trying to encourage or engage the client with is looking for how they envision the situation working out, or if they envision it working out. And so, certainly it's a contextual thing. I coach a lot of folks about relationships, about spirituality, about practices that ground them in their personal life. I certainly enjoy the occasional business coaching session, but that's not what I do the most of. And so certainly, business folks often come with a goal in mind. That's how business operates. And so certainly as coaches that are coaching business people, it's a very different thing. However, in our personal lives, we don't necessarily always have goals. Sometimes we do, maybe it's getting healthier or something like that. But to me, a goal is actually the outcome, right? It's the feeling or the measurable thing at the end. And so often what I feel like is more important for us to be coaching is all the phases in between. So certainly the goal might be helpful to know what's at the end of the road. But I think what's more important is, okay, what's the next right thing, or what's the next step? And so I often find myself, rather than saying, what's your goal at the end, I often find myself saying, okay, well, what do you want to do about it? So you've presented a problem. What do you want to do about it? And that rarely leads to them saying, well, in 3 years, I want to have X, Y, or Z happen. And it more often leads to, well, I just want to start waking up earlier so I have an extra hour in the day. Well, that's a tomorrow thing potentially, right? Not a goal that's 3 years down the road. And so I'm often asking, so what do you want to do? How do you want to feel about this thing? And that really kind of sets them in the immediate future or the right now. What can I do to resolve it?
I love how you describe that so much. I know, Casey, with your sessions, even one session can be super powerful. And with coaching, the mainstream does not understand necessarily how often to come to a coach, or should I come every week? Is it like counseling? Have you found a client come and just have one session and that's enough, and then they come back later? What's the pattern that you see a lot with your clients?
I've truly experienced, I think, everything in between. I have had at least 2 clients who have come one time. They were both referrals, and someone that was a client of mine said, in the midst of a conversation between the 2 of them, gosh, it sounds like you just have a lot of uncertainty around this thing. One particular was a relationship that was just kind of in a really dark place, and they just couldn't see any light at the end of the tunnel. And so the friend said, why don't you just set up a session with Casey? We talked for about an hour and a half. My sessions are typically 50 minutes, but this person was like, can we please go just a little bit longer? And I said, sure. And so we talked, and at the end of the session, they were like, I have a plan to move forward, and this is what I came to you for. Now, I certainly would have loved to have continued on and maybe helped them establish some new patterns and routines, but that wasn't what they had in mind. And from what I understand, just peripherally, because they're very close to one of my other clients, they're doing well. And that's one of the places where, again, as a coach, it's not our job to get invested. We're not becoming best friends with our clients. We're just offering to hold that space. So that's an example of one session that, I feel like it was what that person needed. I have mostly, I would say, folks who come in with a particular sort of genre of issue. Maybe it's not a specific, but it's like, I'm having overall my relationships are just not where I want them to be, or something a little more generic, let's call it. And those, I think, typically fall in the 3 to 5 sessions, which I kind of think of as a series of sessions. And I think that's probably the experience that I would say the majority of people would benefit from, unless you've got a really specific goal in mind. One session might be tough to just get it all out there and feel around what all the options are. And so that 3 to 5 session thing really gives you the space to do that. And then, at the other end of the spectrum, I have a couple of clients who I see almost weekly. And for them, the sessions are a chance because they don't have anyone else that they want to talk to about the things we're talking about. And so it really is, that's where I see the most conversational, just sort of, I just wanted to check in and tell you how things are going, and maybe you can offer some insight and some nuance into what's going on with the situation. So I really see sort of all of those, and each of them has their own benefit. But if I were selling an ideal thing, I think if the average person is unsure, go ahead and get your mind around the idea of maybe seeing this coach for 3 sessions. Maybe you won't need all 3, maybe you'll want to do more, but that's a good way to go into it, knowing that without the expectation that everything's going to get fixed in session 1.
So how about in the next 3 to 5 minutes, if we give our viewers an opportunity to sort of have an idea of how coaching works? It's a game we like to play. So, and with our guests, what we say is, would you prefer, as our guest, to coach, be coached, or watch the coaching happen?
Oh my, it's like being on a game show.
Indeed.
That's great. I don't know.
3 doors.
Right, exactly.
It's your choice.
The fun part is there's no, scary thing hiding behind.
There's a prize behind every door. Exactly.
I don't get a ton of opportunity to be coached.
Okay.
I should say I don't make a ton of opportunity. That's a distinction I like my clients to make sometimes. So I will say I don't make a ton of opportunity to be coached. So I would love that if that's door number two.
Of course it's an option. So I'm a people who watch. I love to watch. So Candice or Des, who's coaching?
Let Des. I'm so.
I love to coach. I love to coach. So I'll coach any day.
Okay.
Okay. Let's set a timer here. 3 to 5 minutes.
Okay.
So this is just a little sneak peek of what coaching might look like in session. Hi, Casey.
Hello.
Nice to see you today. Anything in particular on your mind you'd like to chat about in our coaching session?
You know, I am just I don't want to bring the mood down here, but I'm really just feeling some anxiety around the political situation we find ourselves in. And I'll keep it generic at that, but just I don't know, I'm spending some time thinking about how we stay focused on ourselves and on the work we're doing, even when things around us seem really challenging. And I've just been kind of hitting a little bit of a wall with that lately. Like I know what I want, but getting there seems to be a little bit of a challenge.
So you use the word anxiety. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think what occurs for me is a little bit of a feeling of helplessness. Maybe seems a little bit extreme, but definitely a sense that I don't know, I don't see what I have to contribute to help what I see as a really challenging place in which we as a society and as a culture find ourselves. And so I want to feel some confidence in that I'm doing my part, that I'm doing the best I can.
So what contribution would you like to make?
I definitely want to be a voice for positivity and for change. And that's a contribution for others. I also think I want to be able to confidently say to myself that I'm taking care of myself and that I don't always have to be focused on others, because so much of my life and my work is towards helping others, but we have to start by taking care of ourselves. And so that's another side of that contribution coin, is how am I taking care of myself too?
So what can lead you confidently toward more of this self-care?
Definitely my personal practices, my spiritual practices. I mean, those are so grounding for me. And so it's really, I have a desire to kind of double down on my commitment to practicing those things. And then also I'm wanting to work on a mindset that says I can't solve everything. I can't fix it all. But that I also don't have to shoulder the weight of the world, that I don't have to do that myself, that I can be happy in my own little corner of the world, even when everything else isn't going according to plan. Making kind of a separation, setting a little bit of a boundary, that I don't have to feel all of the weight of, the whole world having its ongoing problems, but that I can be happy and I can feel safe in my own space, my own circle of people and relationships.
So what can lead you to this acceptance that you seek?
Trusting the experiences I have. When I'm with my partner, when I'm with friends, I feel the thing I'm describing, but it's really easy for me to lose sight of it when I'm not sort of in a cocoon, and so I think reminding myself, it may just be saying the words out loud, like, you're here and you're safe and you're doing the best you can. It makes me think of, I love the 4 agreements. And that last agreement is always do your best, you know? And it's like, I can talk to my clients all day about that. Like if you wake up and you do your best, you can go to bed and sleep safely knowing that. But it's hard to turn it around and practice it myself. And I often find that to be the case, you know, that I can preach something, but then turning around and living it myself. And so I think that's a really good thing for me to keep practicing, is saying, I'm doing my best. And that's all I can give.
So what does it feel like in your body to say, I am safe?
Yeah. I should say, whenever I'm not reminding myself of that, I can definitely feel this sort of energetic current that runs right up under my heart. It sort of feels like that keeps everything a little bit lifted and not in the great way lifted. When I say that, when I breathe into that, I feel everything settle. And it's such a nice feeling. I think sometimes there's a little bit of self-sabotage that goes on. You know, we even know in the back of our mind that all I need to do is stop and close my eyes and take a deep breath. But we don't do it because it's like, maybe that's not real. But it's the realest thing that we have, right? I mean, we can physically feel it. And so just saying this out loud is that great reminder to trust that instinct when I want to take a deep breath. I actually changed my Apple Watch face yesterday to the breathing face. So it reminds me to do that. And so it's a little ironic that I'm back here at this moment saying, yeah, you've already taken one step, but I got to look at it and do it. And that's a good action step for me from here.
So you mentioned weight on your shoulders. If you lifted one thing from the weight that is on your shoulders, what is one thing that might lift?
It really does come back to me, that thing that I'm not going to individually ruin or fix what I see as our societal problems right now. It would be just a letting go of the propriety that I've taken for whatever reason, of letting that sit with me, of feeling like I'm somehow responsible or need to be more engaged in order to fix. I can do my part, but there are countless other people also doing or not doing their parts, and I can't control that. And that's the word really that is hard for me to say and to recognize, but gosh, it's been with me a long time, and that is control. If I feel like I'm in control of the situation, then I somehow feel safer, but it's an illusion. Control is, and I know that. And so it's accepting that and laying it down, that I don't need to have control, and in letting go of it, so much changes for the better for me.
And what can you most trust right now?
That love does actually always win. I mean, it seems both cliche because it's a popular statement, but it also seems that the absolute truest thing for me. And so, again, it's another practice what you preach. I can't say that I believe that if I don't actually believe it. And so really getting in touch with what it means to really believe that, I think, is something that would really, really help me.
So in these few minutes that we spent together in a coaching process, how do you feel now?
Lighter, definitely saying out loud something that's been sort of just swimming in my head for a week or so now, is nice. And I think that often is the case. I'm jumping back into interview mode a little bit here, but as coaches, I think we have to keep in mind that our clients are not always discovering for the first time with us. It may just be the first time they've said it out loud. And so, that is always should be in the back of our minds. I was going to say it is always in the back of our minds, but sometimes it's not. And I think it's a good reminder to bring back that this may not be some revolutionary thought that the client has had. I've been saying all of what I just said to you to myself for a week. But it just sort of was like the pigpen cloud looming over my head, and saying it out loud streamlines and makes it real. And also, you can't unknow something once you know it. And so having said those words out loud now, like I know it. And even though I may doubt, I can't unknow that. And so, yeah, I feel all the effects of that. Thank you.
You're welcome. What I love about coaching is also, I heard that. This is a gift for me as a coach as well, is the resonance of what you said. I felt, I was getting goosebumps when you were talking. It just is such a beautiful witnessing. And I like how you describe coaching as conversational. It's just a conversation. It's a beautiful conversation where someone can, in that moment, lay it on the line. So yeah, thank you for letting me coach you.
Yes, absolutely. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, Casey. That was really great to watch. I feel inspired as well. And I love always wins. I think that's so true. I have a question from social media, switching it a little bit. How can coaching help me in my spiritual practice?
Yes, this is my favorite thing to talk about. Some people have gurus or traditions that they follow that prescribe ways in which to connect with our higher self or the divine or whatever spirit means to the person. I happen to be one of those people, but I also come from a tradition that really values individual exploration and crafting practices that work for the individual. And so what I love about the spiritual coaching that I get to do, and I hope this speaks to the broader sense of the question beyond just my personal practice, is we believe in coaching in general, but especially in the holistic style of coaching that we practice, that individuals already have all of the answers within themselves. They're completely whole. And so you're not coming to a coach to fix you or to discover something within you that's not already there. What you're doing is looking deeply into a mirror when you come to a coach and seeing reflected back all the best things and maybe some of the harder things to see, but these sort of true images of what's going on within you. And so that's what spiritual practice is connecting with the absolute deepest, best parts of ourselves, and often facing, what Jung and others would call the shadow aspects of ourselves. And so practices do that. They tap into those areas. And so when you coach with someone about spirituality, about your practices, you're able to hold that mirror up to look and see and identify what it is you want to work on. I typically start with my clients just in general mindfulness, because I think that's sort of the underlying root of all spiritual practice is mindfulness. And that may be meditation, that may be mindful movement. But I think without some foundation of mindfulness practice, we can't really advance much deeper than that. So that's typically where I start and work with the client on what mindfulness is, existing things they may be doing that they either know or aren't aware are helping that. We sort of grow that together, and then from there move on into what I refer to, and hopefully there's not a lot of stigma attached to this word, but as sort of rituals, things that we do, actions that we take that consciously connect us to whatever bigger than ourselves we're looking to connect with. And those can be as formal as going to a church or a synagogue or a mosque to participate in a more traditional form of worship, or it can be as simple as taking a walk in nature, because that connects you with the higher understanding of what's bigger than you in the world and in the universe. And so that's sort of the progression I see, is from that sort of core place of mindfulness, and then into eventually something that may look like a set or a single ritual for each individual person, that keeps them both grounded and also expansive. And that's the unique dynamic in spiritual coaching and spirituality, is we start from a place of really rooted and groundedness in, it's not all about me, and I have an understanding or a belief in something bigger. And then eventually that groundedness allows us to really open up, into much bigger concepts and ideas. And so it all starts with being here now, as Ram Dass would say, and then eventually lets us expand into something much bigger. I don't know if that exactly answers that question, but that's sort of my take on spiritual coaching, and it's different for everyone, certainly, just like any coaching is.
Absolutely. Thank you, Casey.
Yeah, I was going to say, Casey, I can say for the three of us for sure, here and now, we are really feeling some big appreciation for you and how you do what you do, and what you bring to this thing called coaching. Before we finish up, is there anything else that you just sort of have on your heart to offer about how you do what you do?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm really in that place right now where I believe everyone can benefit from coaching. And I'm so grateful for Des and for you guys. Anything like this, like what Radiant does to get the message of coaching out, is, I think, so important. I went a long part of my life feeling like there was stigma around therapy, coaching I didn't even know existed, feeling like I had to do it all on my own. And you heard that reflected a little bit in my coaching with Des. I mean, there's remnants of that still lingering, and I think that's the story for so many people, is that we're just expected, especially as Westerners, as Americans, we're expected to just sort of do it all and do it with a smile on our face. And when I realized that there is absolutely no stigma attached to seeing a therapist, and that when I discovered coaching and realized that you can have 10 people, 20 people around you, each supporting you and walking with you in various aspects of your life, that community is really where it happens, and that in the individualized world, that it's actually all just a joke. That's really when everything changed for me. And so that's the message that I so desire for people to understand, is coming to a coach is not about admitting defeat in any way. It's really the opposite. It's about being so confident in what you have to offer or what you have to do that you can delegate a portion of that out to someone to walk with you and to bounce ideas off and hold that mirror up. And so, I'm all about normalizing coaching so much that everyone is seeing a coach for everything that they're doing. Because again, communication, conversation, and community, I really think is where all the magic happens.
Excellent conversation. Thank you so much, Casey, for joining us.
Thank you all. This has absolutely been a blast.
It sure has. Right back at you.
Casey, how can people find you online?
Yeah. So my short URL that you can get to me is caseyconnects.xyz. That's the quickest way to get to me. And I'm Casey Connects on Instagram as well. So all my information's there, including my offerings. I'm also a yoga teacher, and so I do that in addition to coaching and group facilitation and that sort of thing. So can't wait to connect with folks.
Thanks so much for spending time with us today, Casey.
Thank you all.
Take care.
And we'll see you all next time.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.